Hello, everyone. Chief Meteorologist Matt-Holiner. Well, as we get started with 2022, I wanted to take a few minutes to look back on the weather we saw during 2021 because it was a pretty wild year weather-wise. And the biggest thing that stands out was what a warm year it was. The average temperature in the U.S. was 54.5 degrees, and that makes it the fourth hottest year on record in the United States. Only 2017, 2016, 2012 were warmer. But you know what's interesting? When you look at the top 10 warmest years on record in the United States, notice that the top six have all occurred in the last 10 years. In fact, the only year that didn't occur in relatively recent times was 1934, which was the peak of the Dust Bowl. Not only was it a very warm year in 2021, though, it was a very extreme year. And one way you can track that is by looking at the number of weather events that caused $1 billion of damage or more. And we had 20 of those in 2021. And you can see where they occurred and when they occurred on this map here. And there was a little bit of everything in 2021. We had wildfires that caused over $1 billion in damage, severe thunderstorms, hailstorms, 4 tropical storms and hurricanes that made landfall in the U.S. and caused over $1 billion in damage. The epic winter storm and cold outbreak last February that was particularly bad in Texas. And also, and this is a good example of how a general pattern can sometimes be interrupted, there was a flooding event in January of 2021 in California that caused over $1 billion damage. Of course, the big story with California in recent years has been the drought, the heat, the wildfires, but sometimes a general pattern can be interrupted. And they finally got some rain in California, but it was too much rain, and it resulted in flooding that caused over $1 billion in damage. So you add up all these events, and the total amount of damages came out to $145 billion. So that makes 2021 the third costliest year on record. And records began in 1980. That's when NOAA started tracking how much damage weather events cause each year. But you know what's interesting? You look at the top 6 years for the most costly weather years on record. Notice they've all occurred since 2000. The only years that were costlier than 2021, 2005, that epic hurricane season, which of course included Hurricane Katrina, and 2017, and a big reason 2017 was so costly was because of Hurricane Harvey. And if you're wondering, yes, this has been adjusted for inflation. So they went back to those 1980s, 1990 events, and they factored in inflation to see how much those events would have cost today, and even still, the events in more recent years were more costly. So the events in the past weren't as bad as what we've been seeing in recent years. And when you look at just the number of billion-dollar weather disasters, notice here too, it's all the biggest years for the most billion-dollar weather disasters have all been fairly recently. 2021 with $20 billion weather disasters, that came in number 2 all time. The only year with more billion-dollar weather disasters, 2020. We had $22 billion weather disasters in 2020. So yes, billion-dollar weather disasters are becoming more common. Back in the 1980s, we would usually go about 80 days or so between billion-dollar weather disasters. But in the last 5 years, that's dropped to about 18 days between billion-dollar weather disasters. Now, part of the reason for this is because population is going up. There's more things that can be destroyed. We have more businesses, more homes than we did in the 1980s. So yes, more damage can be done because there are more people and more things. But what we're also seeing because of global warming is the number of extreme weather events is going up. We're seeing more flooding. We're seeing more droughts. We're seeing more heat waves. We're seeing more hurricanes. And so you factor both of those things in, and it's likely we're going to continue to see these high numbers of billion-dollar weather disasters unless we strengthen our infrastructure or take efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.